They laughed when I walked into the elite fashion show in my homemade dress and worn out shoes. The whispers, the stares, the mockery. Little did they know, I wasn't there by accident. I had a secret that would silence every snicker in that room forever. Have you ever been underestimated, pushed aside, made to feel like you don't belong? This story might just give you the courage to prove everyone wrong. Subscribe now and hit that notification bell to join me on this journey from mockery to triumph. I've always been the one with the needle and thread in my hands, even when the other kids were outside playing. Growing up in Millfield, population barely 2,000, nobody understood why I spent hours sketching designs and stitching fabrics together. My grandmother taught me the basics before she passed when I was 12, and from there, I was self-taught. YouTube tutorials, thrift store pattern books, and endless trial and error became my fashion education. The local seamstress job at Nell's Alterations paid the bills, but it was hardly my dream. Each day, I'd take in waistlines and hem pants while dreaming of creating something that would make people stop and stare. In a good way. My tiny apartment above the hardware store became my studio, mannequins made from duct tape and old couch cushions lining the walls. Each night, I'd work until my fingers ached, creating dresses no one would ever see. Then, one morning, scrolling through my phone during a coffee break, I saw it, the Luminary Fashion Showcase. The most prestigious event in the industry was happening just 3 hours away in the city. Designers from Paris, Milan, and New York would be there, along with every fashion editor and influencer who mattered. The article mentioned that limited public viewing tickets were available. My heart raced as I calculated the cost against my meager savings. "You're going?" My coworker Brenda looked at me like I'd suggested climbing Mount Everest in flip-flops when I told her, "Honey, that world isn't for people like us. Those tickets cost more than you make in a week." She wasn't wrong, but I couldn't explain the pull I felt. This wasn't just about seeing beautiful clothes. It was about standing in the same room where dreams like mine came true. I spent 2 weeks' worth of grocery money on that ticket. Another week's pay went toward the emerald green dress I'd designed and sewn specifically for the event. My best work, with intricate hand-embroidered details along the bodice. I'd never made anything so beautiful. The night before, I barely slept, imagining conversations with famous designers who would somehow notice me in the crowd and see my potential. Reality hit hard the moment I stepped into the gleaming lobby of the Archer Hotel. Women in designer heels that cost more than my rent glided past. Men in tailored suits that probably required multiple fittings casually discussed million-dollar advertising campaigns. And there I was, in my homemade dress and the nicest shoes I owned, which I'd bought secondhand and polished until my fingers cramped. I presented my ticket with trembling hands, feeling the security guard's skeptical gaze. He looked me up and down before reluctantly allowing me through. As I entered the main hall, the whispers started. Two women in matching black dresses with perfect red lips glanced my way and snickered behind manicured hands. A photographer lowered his camera as I passed. The message was clear. I didn't belong here. I was an outsider, a country mouse who had wandered into a den of sophisticated cats. What hurt most wasn't their judgment. It was that they were judging the very thing I'd poured my heart into. My dress, my creation. But I straightened my spine and lifted my chin. I hadn't come this far to turn back now. I found a seat in the back row, trying to make myself as small as possible. The whispers followed me like a shadow. "Did you see that dress? Is that handmade?" One woman said, turning the word into something dirty. Her companion laughed. "Maybe she's lost. The craft fair is probably down the street." Their laughter cut through me like scissors through cheap fabric. During the pre-show reception, I stood alone with a glass of champagne I was too nervous to drink. Everyone else moved in tight circles, air kissing and name dropping. When I tried to join a conversation about sustainable fabrics, something I actually knew about, the group physically shifted to exclude me. One woman even brushed invisible lint from her sleeve after my dress accidentally touched her arm. I was contemplating leaving when he approached. Tall, with dark wavy hair and eyes that seemed to notice everything, he wore a simple black suit that somehow looked different from all the others. "That embroidery is exquisite," he said, nodding toward my bodice. "Most people here wouldn't recognize hand stitching if it spelled out their name." His smile was warm, genuine. "Thank you," I managed, surprised anyone had noticed the detail. "I'm Eleanor." "Thomas Reed," he replied. My heart nearly stopped. Thomas Reed, the independent designer whose sustainable collections had revolutionized ethical fashion. I'd studied his work for years. "Did you design this yourself?" he asked, gesturing to my dress. Before I could answer, a woman in a skin-tight silver dress appeared at his side. "Thomas, darling, they're looking for you backstage." "Oh," she said, noticing me with undisguised disdain. "How interesting." She looked me up and down. "Vintage, is it? Or perhaps homemade?" She said the last word loudly enough for nearby groups to turn and stare. My face burned as laughter rippled through the crowd. Someone took a photo, probably for social media mockery. Thomas frowned, but the woman pulled him away before he could say anything else. I stood frozen, humiliation washing over me in waves. During the show, I tried to focus on the stunning designs rather than the occasional glances and whispers directed my way. The craftsmanship was breathtaking. Architectural silhouettes, innovative textiles, details that told stories. I frantically sketched in the small notebook I always carried, drawing inspiration even through my embarrassment. When Thomas's collection closed the show, I was mesmerized. His designs were both avant-garde and wearable, pushing boundaries while remaining true to his ethical principles. The audience erupted in thunderous applause. As people began filing out afterward, I lingered, not wanting to face the gauntlet of judgment again. "You're still here?" Thomas's voice startled me. He stood in the now empty row behind me, suit jacket slung over his shoulder. "I was just—" I fumbled with my notebook, embarrassed to be caught. He gestured to it. "May I?" Reluctantly, I handed it over. He flipped through pages of my sketches, his expression unreadable. "These are good, really good. Untrained eye, but fresh perspective." He looked up. "Where did you study?" "I didn't," I admitted. "Just self-taught. Small town, big dreams. You know the cliché." Instead of the dismissal I expected, he nodded thoughtfully. "The best designers see things differently. Break rules they never learned." He handed back my notebook. "Would you like to see how a collection comes together, behind the scenes?" My heart raced. "Are you serious?" "Completely. I could use a fresh perspective on my new pieces." He smiled. "Unless you have somewhere else to be?" It felt like the universe was offering me a chance I'd never dared to imagine. Despite everything that had happened that night, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I wasn't going to say no. Thomas's studio was nothing like I'd imagined. No gleaming white walls or minimalist furniture. Instead, it was gloriously chaotic. Fabrics draped over every surface, sketches pinned to corkboards, half-dressed mannequins standing like silent sentinels. It felt alive, like creativity had physical form. "My team thinks I'm crazy," he confessed that first night, showing me his preliminary sketches for his new collection. "I want to combine traditional techniques from across cultures with sustainable materials. Everyone says it's too ambitious." I found myself pointing to a particular design. What if you used a modified smocking technique here? It would give structure without adding weight. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Instead of being offended, Thomas looked thoughtful. Show me. That night became the first of many. Thomas arranged for me to use his studio after hours, away from judgmental eyes. I'd finish my shift at the alterations shop, take the bus to the city, and spend hours working alongside him. What began as occasional suggestions evolved into a true collaboration. You have something rare, he told me one night as we shared takeout Chinese food on his workroom floor. You haven't been taught what's impossible, so you try things seasoned designers wouldn't dare. Our hands touched as we both reached for the last spring roll, and something electric passed between us. As weeks passed, our connection deepened. Long discussions about fashion history turned into conversations about our lives, our dreams. I told him about my grandmother, how she'd sewn wedding dresses for half the brides in my hometown. He shared stories of his struggles breaking into the industry as an outsider himself. One rainy evening, as I demonstrated a particular embroidery technique, Thomas stood so close I could feel his breath on my neck. "You're extraordinary," he whispered. When I turned, his lips met mine in a kiss that felt inevitable. The needle pricked my finger as I dropped it in surprise, but I barely noticed. His arms around me felt like coming home to a place I'd never been. Our relationship blossomed alongside the collection. Late-night design sessions ended with us curled together on his office sofa, talking until dawn. Sometimes he'd bring me fresh flowers, wild flowers, never roses, because they break the rules, just like you, he'd say. One night after we'd finalized the last piece, Thomas grew serious. "I want you to showcase your designs too." I laughed, thinking he was joking. "Right? Alongside world-famous designers?" "Exactly that." He wasn't smiling. "As the closing act." My heart stopped. "That's impossible. The committee would never—" "I'm on the committee," he said simply. "We have one slot open since Valentina had to withdraw. I've already shown them your sketches. Anonymously, of course." "The same people who laughed at me?" Panic rose in my throat. Thomas took my hands in his. "They love the designs. They just don't know they're yours. Yet." His eyes held mine. "It's time for them to see what I see." I should have been terrified, but strangely, I felt calm. For the first time, I truly believed in my work and in myself. That night, as Thomas held me close, whispering encouragement against my hair, I knew whatever happened next would change my life forever. Backstage was controlled chaos. Models rushed between makeup stations, stylists made last-minute adjustments, and designers paced nervously. Thomas had arranged a small corner for me, away from curious eyes. My collection, 6 pieces that represented everything I believed about fashion, hung on a portable rack, each garment protected by a black cover. "5 minutes to first walk," someone called. My hands trembled so badly I could barely pin the final embellishment on my signature piece. "Breathe," Thomas whispered, appearing at my side. He looked handsome in his show attire, but his eyes were only for me. "They're going to love you." "They don't even know it's me yet," I reminded him, stomach churning. Thomas had arranged everything under a mysterious new designer label. The audience would learn my identity only at the final walk. "They will," he said confidently, squeezing my hand before disappearing to oversee his own collection's presentation. I watched from the wings as designer after designer showcased their work. The same woman who had mocked my dress received tepid applause for her collection of predictable silhouettes. I recognized others who had laughed at me that first night, now anxiously awaiting the audience's verdict on their work. Thomas's collection was met with thunderous approval. His models moved like poetry in motion, each garment telling a story of innovation and sustainability. When he took his bow, our eyes met across the runway, and his subtle wink gave me courage. Unknown designer, you're up next, the stage manager announced, looking around in confusion. Where is— Here, I said quietly, stepping forward with my rack of designs. The manager looked skeptical but nodded toward the dressing area where my models waited. The music changed as my first design appeared on the runway, a flowing gown made from repurposed vintage fabrics, transformed through my grandmother's techniques. The audience leaned forward, their expressions shifting from curiosity to interest. By the third piece, I could hear murmurs of appreciation. The fifth, a structured jacket with intricate hand embroidery, elicited spontaneous applause. Then came the finale, my signature piece. The model wore it with confidence, the innovative silhouette challenging conventional definitions of beauty. As she reached the end of the runway, she stopped, turned, and instead of heading back, she extended her hand toward the wings. That was my cue. Thomas had insisted on this moment. They need to see the artist, not just the art. On legs that felt disconnected from my body, I stepped onto the runway. The harsh lights blinded me momentarily, but not before I saw recognition dawn on faces in the front row. The woman in the silver dress gasped audibly. Several fashion editors looked up from their notes in shock. The silence lasted only seconds before eruption. Applause, hesitant at first, then building to a roar. A fashion icon in the front row rose to her feet, others following. A standing ovation. For me, for the small town seamstress they had mocked. As I took my final bow, I spotted Thomas at the back of the hall, applauding with tears in his eyes. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about contracts or careers. I was remembering the little girl who sewed doll clothes by candlelight during power outages, dreaming of exactly this moment. The aftermath was a beautiful blur. Fashion journalists who had ignored me now clamored for interviews. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications as my story went viral. Unknown seamstress stuns fashion elite. The silver dress woman approached me at the after party, her apology stilted but seemingly sincere. I clearly misjudged your aesthetic vision, she said, unable to fully meet my eyes. Thomas stayed by my side through it all, his hand warm in mine as we navigated this new reality together. I told you, he whispered during a rare quiet moment. They just needed to see. 3 offers from major fashion houses arrived within a week. Thomas helped me navigate the contracts, insisting I maintain creative control. Don't let them change what makes you special, he advised. I chose to partner with a sustainable luxury brand that valued my unconventional techniques and ethical approach. As summer arrived, Thomas surprised me with tickets to coastal Italy. For research, he claimed with a smile. We spent 2 weeks exploring small villages, meeting local artisans, and collecting textiles. In the evenings, we'd sketch together on our hotel balcony, the Mediterranean stretching before us. When Thomas kissed me under starlit skies, I knew this was what people meant by living your dream. My first official collection debuted 6 months later to critical acclaim. Refreshingly authentic, the reviews said. A new voice in sustainable luxury. The front row included faces from my hometown. Brenda from the alterations shop crying happy tears. Neighbors who had always supported my strange hobby. Life changed in ways both profound and subtle. I split my time between the city and a renovated farmhouse near my hometown, where I established a workshop training local women in specialized techniques. Thomas and I collaborated professionally and built our personal life with the same attention to detail we gave our designs. One evening, almost exactly a year after that first fashion show, Thomas took me to a rooftop garden overlooking the city. Wildflowers covered every surface. their imperfect beauty reflecting the philosophy behind my work. There, surrounded by blooms, he knelt and opened a small box containing a ring, not with a diamond, but with a piece of sea glass we'd found in Italy. You taught me to see beauty in unexpected places, he said, voice thick with emotion. Will you continue teaching me for the rest of our lives? My yes was immediate and certain. Sometimes I still wake up wondering if it was all a dream. The girl who was once mocked now defining trends, the love story that unfolded like fabric under skilled hands. But then Thomas stirs beside me, or I see my designs in a magazine, and I'm reminded that the most extraordinary stories often begin with someone who simply refuses to accept the limitations others try to impose. That night at the fashion show wasn't really about proving others wrong. It was about proving myself right, about believing that authentic vision has power, that craft has value, and that sometimes the person they're laughing at today is exactly who they'll be applauding tomorrow. If this story touched your heart, be sure to like this video and share it with someone who needs a reminder that they're more powerful than they know. Subscribe for more stories of unexpected victories, and remember, sometimes the person they're laughing at today is the same person they'll be applauding tomorrow.